Hi everyone, my name is Kat, and this is part 2 of tips for managing any chronic illness. If you haven't checked out part 1 of this video, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description box. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. Tip number 1 is to keep track of all of your medications with an app. I didn't realize just how awesome this was going to be and such a game changer until I actually started using one. Before I was just using my phone timer, and then I would put in like, take this medication and then eat at this time and take this other medication, and I had all these timers on my phone to remind me of all the things that I had to do in the day. But this has taken away all of the medications that I have to take, which is quite a few throughout the day, and it sends me a reminder and a notification constantly if I haven't taken it. You can mark down once you've taken it, or you can actually hit skip to just entirely skip it so you won't keep getting a notification. So I'm just using MediSafe as an example, but there are other apps. It's just this one was free, and I did a little bit of digging and found that this one had some great reviews. But by all means, use whatever one that works for you. Tip number 2 is to keep track of when you're running out of your medication, and I suggest writing it on a calendar, but you can put it on a Google Calendar or an app like I mentioned earlier. You can also have your pharmacy remind you when you're running out as well. They don't always do this though because they get really busy, so it's better if you just keep track of it yourself. That app that I spoke about, MediSafe, it does do that for you. Tip number 3 is to make sure that you keep your questions to a bare minimum when you're going to your doctor's office. I keep it to 3, and then I have about 5 to 10 questions in total that I either bring up the other ones later, and I just sort of prioritize the first 3. This is really important because doctors are strapped for time. This is especially important in Canada because specialist appointments take a really long time to get. Your consult alone can take anywhere from 3 months to 2 years, and your follow-up appointments are usually every 3 months to 6 months. This is depending on where you're located, and again, it really depends on your country as well. This is just speaking from experience living in one of the biggest cities in Canada. Tip number 4 is to consider a medic alert bracelet. You might want to consider this if you have a condition like hypoglycemia or a really severe allergy or some other condition where you might be in a position where you go unconscious. How medic alert bracelets work is that you will have the little plate here that says medic alert, and then on the flip side, you'll have a list of your most serious conditions or allergies on it, and it will have a number on it that somebody can call, either the EMT or the hospital staff or whoever finds you if you're unconscious, and it will give all of the detailed medical information that you give medic alert. That is a subscription thing, so it's something that you would pay, I believe, yearly. So it might not be something that you want to do in terms of the subscription piece, but you could get a medic alert bracelet that's either a name brand or non-name brand and just have the engraving of whatever condition that you have on it just for reference. Even if the EMT don't actually look at your bracelet, if you're conscious or you have somebody who's with you on the way to the hospital, you can always point to your medic alert bracelet for them to take a look at. They will be asking you a lot of questions on the way to the hospital about your symptoms, your medication that you're on, and everything that's been happening with you. On that note, iPhone also has a medic alert option, and you can access it even when the screen is locked. You just need to hit this bottom button here on the side along with the home button, and then you'll see emergency and then medic alert in the bottom corner. When you're actually in your iPhone, I put a link in the description so that you can actually access it on your iPhone to actually type everything in. But basically when you're on your iPhone is when you put in all of your information. So first you'll click on the health app, and then you'll go, I'm just gonna hit edit because I've already put it in there. You'll go into here, this is what you'll see once you first click in and go into here. And you'll put in your name, your date of birth, your medical conditions, your medical notes, etc. And then you'll just hit done, and it'll all be there. Again, EMTs don't really check this, but it's something that either you can bring up or your spouse can bring up or whoever's with you at the time, so that you're not kind of having to think about all of the different medications that you're on and all the conditions that you have when you're either in the ambulance or when you're at the hospital, because you're going to be asked a number of times. Tip number 6 is asking for the medical images or the medical records that you get when you're either at the doctor's office, like the blood lab, or when you're at the ER. A lot of blood labs will actually allow you to sign up and then access your records online so that you can see everything, and hospitals will do that too, but hospitals don't update it right away. So you might want to ask when you're actually there, and they also won't give you an image a lot of the times. They won't upload that image. Sometimes they will, other times they won't. They'll just give you the report online. So having the images is really important because this is something you can just immediately send off to the specialist, especially when you're medically complex, but just in general, because like we talked about in part 1 with the secretary, sometimes like things don't get done and it's just taking a really long time, and sometimes they just still don't reach the doctor even though the secretary was supposed to actually give it to them. So it's always great to have that either for your doctor, specialist, or for yourself for your own records. I keep these reports and images in a filing cabinet at home. In Canada, this is especially important, I think, because here we don't have access to the same doctors that a lot of people say in the States have access to. So I found it really helpful to send over just for either a second opinion or even to just like consult with a doctor over in the States or another part of the world so that they can take a look at what's going on and tell me, is this something to be concerned about as like a second opinion, or just because we don't have the specialists here to actually deal with it. Obviously, not everybody in Canada can afford to actually go to the States or go to another part of the world, but some doctors in the States will actually give you a free consult. Some of them will even reach out to your doctors, especially when your condition is rare or complex, or sometimes they'll charge you, say, like $300 or a couple $100, like Canadian or US, whatever they prefer, and that will be for like an e-consult where they look at all of your medical records and those images that we just talked about. Tip number 7 is to join some Facebook groups online or forums like inspire.com. These can be really good for support, and sometimes you can learn some really good information on there that you wouldn't have normally known about your condition. I just want to caution people that some groups can be a little bit more negative than other groups. It kind of depends on who's moderating and also who's posting and what the posts are about. Sometimes it can be a little daunting and scary to kind of see that, you know, when you're newly diagnosed, joining a group and seeing how much people are suffering. And sometimes that's all that people are talking about rather than sort of figuring out ways of like how to manage and how to cope. So I would just caution you to not spend too much time on there, especially if you're at home and you're more housebound, because it can really do something to your mental health. So be aware of that, but definitely do look for more information and do look for support there. Tip number 8 is to seek some support, whether you have a mental health condition or a physical health condition. This could be online therapy or in-person therapy if you can afford those things. Some online therapies are Talkspace and BetterHelp. Sometimes they're a little bit more affordable. Most hospitals have some type of support group. That can look like a cognitive behavioral therapy group for chronic pain or chronic illness, or it could be something like MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction. That's an 8-week program that takes you through mindfulness meditation for chronic pain and chronic illness. The hospital programs are free, but they take a long time to get into. I should say they're free for Canada. Tip number 9 is to not make your chronic illness your entire identity. I think this is probably the most important tip that I could ever possibly give. I've noticed for myself and for other people that it's really easy to get caught in this trap of thinking that your illness is everything that you are, because you have to constantly manage it and it's constantly interfering with a lot of things in your life. But I think it's really important to just stop and make sure that every day you're doing something that has nothing to do with your illness and that you really, really, really enjoy, like some type of hobby or something that you've always wanted to learn, and you know you're still capable of actually learning that thing. You might even find that a lot of your ability has been taken away and you don't really know where to start. So you could just start by watching some funny shows on TV and making that maybe like a ritual. You watch some comedy clips on YouTube, or, you know, maybe do that every single day. Or, you know, for me, like I took up houseplants as a hobby because I really love plants. I think they're really beautiful and really healing. So, you know, I didn't actually have a green thumb and I always wanted to. So I started looking at videos on houseplants and then went to a store and asked what kind of lighting would work with, you know, this kind of plant. If you're really stuck in bed and, you know, you're very housebound, it can be really hard to find things to do. And so that's why, you know, I'm suggesting things like the YouTube channel type of stuff, like actually looking at stuff that's funny. But sometimes I think it's just being in the present moment and looking at, say, the sunlight that's coming through the window and, you know, at a particular time every day, and just sitting and like drinking a cup of tea and watching that sunlight and noticing just how beautiful that is and how simple it is and how you don't need anything for that. You can just enjoy that. Tip number 10 is to be prepared for the battle. And what I mean by this is being prepared to be told that your physical health conditions are all in your head and it's anxiety or depression. This can happen to both men and women. It generally happens to women a lot more, and that's statistical, especially in terms of chronic pain, but also just chronic illness. Something that I think you should be really, really aware of is if you're going in with a partner or, like, say, a spouse or a family member to a doctor or to the ER, and that doctor asks the other person to leave the room for a minute. This did actually happen to me, but I know it's happened to other people because I've talked to other people that this has happened to. Sometimes the doctor will try to trap you into admitting that you have some type of mental health condition when there's actually a physical health condition going on and you're actually in desperate need of help, and they want to just make this easier for themselves. This is pretty serious because this kind of stuff ends up on your chart and it follows you around, and then you're further stigmatized, and then it's even harder to get help. And that can actually happen when you didn't even say that you had any sort of mental health issue going on, any anxiety or depression or anything. They can just say that, and then you can just find that written on your chart one day, and then the next doctor will take a look and be like, oh, so you have anxiety, and you're like, what? This can actually be a huge barrier in getting help and access to like actual physical medical care for a physical illness. What you can do is you can file a complaint if they've either discriminated against you or done something like assaulted you. You can file a complaint with the College of Physicians and Surgeons. Okay, my final tip for today is to record your appointments on your phone on the voice memo. Do ask your doctor before you do this. I just find it's more thorough than actually taking physical notes, even though I do take physical notes, but it's always good for me to have that session actually backed up somewhere where I can just review it later. There's just so much that goes on in an appointment, and it's really easy to forget. So what are some of the ways that you manage your chronic illness? It's always great to share these kind of things together, and I would really love to know how you guys manage everything that you're going through. I hope these tips have been really helpful for you, and if they are, let me know. If I come across any more, I will definitely make more videos if that's something that interests you guys. So that's all my tips for now. Have a great day, guys, and don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment below.